Standing in the corner of my family's backyard, I watched the graduation party unfold around me like I was viewing it through glass. The sound of laughter and congratulations filled the air as everyone celebrated my sister Sarah's medical school graduation. I should have felt happy for her, but all I could feel was the familiar weight of being the family disappointment. 4 years ago, I had walked away from Harvard during my senior year, leaving behind what everyone called a promising future. What they did not know was that I had been protecting something far more valuable than a diploma. Tonight, that secret would change everything. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know in the comments where you are watching from, and do not forget to hit that like button if you have ever felt misunderstood by your own family. Trust me, this story has a twist that will leave you speechless. The Hendricks family had always been about achievement. My father, Professor William Hendricks, taught molecular biology at the State University, while my mother, Catherine Hendricks, was a successful corporate attorney who had never lost a case that mattered. Growing up, our dinner conversations revolved around academic accomplishments, research breakthroughs, and professional milestones. Excellence was not just expected, it was the family currency. Sarah, my younger sister by 3 years, had always been the golden child. Tonight at 25, she stood in our backyard wearing her cap and gown, surrounded by admiring family, friends, and colleagues. She had graduated summa cum laude from medical school and already secured a coveted residency position in cardiology at Johns Hopkins. Her future was bright mapped out, and everyone could see it. I used to be the star. Throughout high school, I had been the brilliant daughter, the one who earned a full scholarship to Harvard for molecular biology. My parents would beam with pride when they talked about my research potential, my grades, my future in biomedical science. I remember the day I got accepted to Harvard. My mother actually cried tears of joy and called everyone she knew. But during my senior year, everything changed. I was working on my thesis under Professor Marcus Webb, a respected researcher in gene therapy. I had stumbled upon something extraordinary during my late-night lab sessions. While studying cellular regeneration, I discovered a unique approach to targeted gene therapy that could potentially revolutionize cancer treatment. The breakthrough was elegant in its simplicity and devastating in its potential impact. Professor Webb saw my work and immediately understood its value. But instead of celebrating my discovery, he began subtly undermining me. He started scheduling important meetings, when I could not attend, excluded me from conferences, and began presenting modified versions of my research as collaborative work, where his contributions seemed more significant. I realized he was planning to claim credit for my discovery once I graduated. The final straw came when I found drafts of a research paper in his office with my methodology, but his name as the primary researcher. I was listed as a minor contributor. That night, I made a decision that would estrange me from my family and friends. I withdrew from Harvard 3 weeks before graduation, taking all my research with me. The explosion at home was immediate and brutal. My parents could not understand how I could throw away 4 years of education and a guaranteed future. They accused me of having a nervous breakdown, of being irresponsible, of wasting my potential. When I tried to explain about the stolen research, they thought I was being paranoid and making excuses. That was 4 years ago. Since then, I had been living alone in a small apartment across town, working under the pseudonym Dr. Daniel. I had converted my basement into a sophisticated laboratory, using equipment I purchased with grants from shell companies I created. My research had continued and evolved, but as far as my family knew, I was just drifting through life, taking odd jobs and refusing to discuss my future plans. They thought I was a failure because they measured success by traditional markers, degrees, titles, public recognition. They had no idea that I had been collaborating with pharmaceutical companies worldwide, that my basement lab had produced 3 international patents, or that my research was being reviewed by the World Health Organization. The isolation was the hardest part. During family gatherings, I felt like a ghost haunting my former life. My parents would ask perfunctory questions about my job search, then quickly change the subject. Sarah tried to be supportive, but even she seemed embarrassed by my circumstances. Their friends would look at me with pity or confusion, wondering how the promising daughter had fallen so far. Tonight felt particularly brutal. As I arrived at Sarah's graduation party, I could see the contrast immediately. Sarah was radiant, surrounded by congratulations and promise. I was the cautionary tale lurking in the background, the reminder of what happens when you make poor choices. I had tried to engage in conversation with some of my parents' colleagues, but the interactions were painful. Dr. Martinez, a family friend, asked what I was doing for work. When I gave vague answers about consulting, he nodded politely, but I could see the judgment in his eyes. Mrs. Thompson, my mother's law partner commented that it was never too late to go back to school, as if education was the only path to redemption. The party was in full swing when the most devastating moment arrived. I was standing near the dessert table trying to remain inconspicuous when I overheard my mother talking to a group of her closest friends. Sarah was there too, glowing as she described her residency plans and her excitement about specializing in cardiac surgery. Mrs. Patterson, one of my mother's oldest friends, looked around and asked, "And what is Tessa up to these days?" I remember she was so brilliant in high school. The question hung in the air like a challenge. My mother's face flushed slightly, and I could see her struggling to find a diplomatic way to address my situation. Sarah glanced in my direction with sympathetic eyes, but she remained silent. "Well," my mother said with a forced laugh, "Tessa dropped out of Harvard her senior year. Maybe she will make it as a security guard someday?" The words hit me like a physical blow. The group fell silent for a moment before nervous laughter rippled through them. I stood there frozen as the people who had known me since childhood chuckled at what my life had become. Mrs. Patterson's eyebrows raised in surprise, while Dr. Franklin, my father's colleague, shook his head with what appeared to be disappointment. "Such a waste of potential," Mrs. Patterson murmured, and others nodded in agreement. "She was always so bright." "What happened?" My mother continued. "Sometimes children make choices that parents cannot understand. We hoped she would eventually come to her senses, but it has been 4 years now. We keep hoping she will find some direction, maybe even just a steady job in security or retail." The conversation continued around me, but I felt like I was underwater. The casual cruelty of my mother's words, delivered with such matter-of-fact resignation, made it clear that I had become the family's greatest embarrassment. These people who had once praised my intelligence and predicted my success were now shaking their heads at my apparent failure. I wanted to defend myself, to explain the real reason I had left Harvard, to tell them about the groundbreaking research I was conducting. But years of keeping my secret had taught me caution. More importantly, I did not want to ruin Sarah's special day with family drama. Instead, I stood there in silence, absorbing their pity and judgment like physical blows. My hands trembled slightly as I set down my untouched piece of cake and tried to compose myself. The laughter and conversations continued around me, but I felt utterly alone in that crowded backyard. Sarah caught my eye from across the group and gave me a look of apology and concern, but she was trapped in her moment of triumph and could not rescue me without creating a scene. I understood her position, but it still stung to realize that even my sister could not defend me in that moment. The worst part was not just the words themselves, but the casual way my mother had delivered them. There was no anger or frustration in her voice, just tired resignation. She had given up on me completely, and that realization was more painful than any argument we had ever had. I excused myself quietly and walked to the far corner of the backyard near my father's rose garden. The party continued without missing a beat, and I realized that my presence or absence made no difference to anyone. I was the family ghost, acknowledged but not really seen. Standing there among the roses, I thought about the irony of my situation. While everyone pitied me for my lack of conventional success, I was actually on the verge of making a discovery that could save thousands of lives. My research on targeted gene therapy had evolved far beyond my original Harvard thesis. I had developed a treatment protocol that could effectively target cancer cells while leaving healthy tissue untouched. But none of them knew, and I could not tell them without risking everything I had worked for. As I stood in the garden trying to compose myself, I heard the distinctive sound of expensive car doors closing in front of our house. This was unusual because most of the party guests had already arrived, and my parents were not expecting anyone else. Through the garden gate, I could see a sleek black Mercedes sedan parked at the curb. The car was clearly expensive and professional, not the type of vehicle that typically appeared in our suburban neighborhood. 3 men in dark business suits emerged from the car, their movements precise and purposeful. The lead man was tall and distinguished, probably in his 50s, with silver hair and the kind of confident bearing that suggested significant authority. His suit was expertly tailored, and he carried himself with the air of someone accustomed to important meetings and serious conversations. The 2 men flanking him appeared to be assistants or associates, both carrying leather portfolios and maintaining the same professional demeanor. They walked directly toward our backyard, with the confidence of people who knew exactly where they were going and why they were there. Their presence immediately commanded attention from the party guests, who began to notice the unusual visitors and started whispering among themselves. The conversations gradually died down as the 3 men entered our backyard through the side gate. The lead man surveyed the crowd with sharp, intelligent eyes, clearly looking for someone specific. His companions remained slightly behind him, alert and professional. "Excuse me," the lead man said in a clear, authoritative voice that carried across the entire gathering. "We are here for Dr. Daniel." The entire party fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop as everyone turned to stare at these unexpected visitors. The name, Dr. Daniel, meant nothing to most of the guests, and confused murmurs began to ripple through the crowd. My father stepped forward, his academic instincts kicking in. "I am Professor Hendricks," he said. "Perhaps there has been some confusion? This is a private family gathering. Are you looking for someone in particular?" The distinguished man smiled politely, but remained focused on his mission. "We represent a consortium of pharmaceutical companies and research institutions. We have been attempting to contact Dr. Daniel regarding some groundbreaking research in gene therapy. We were told we could find Dr. Daniel at this address." My mother joined my father, her lawyer instincts immediately suspicious of unexpected visitors with vague explanations. "I think there has been a mistake," she said firmly. "No one here is Dr. Daniel. This is our daughter's graduation party, and all our guests are family friends." The man remained patient but persistent. "Our information indicates that Dr. Daniel has been conducting revolutionary cancer research and has recently completed clinical trials with remarkable results. We have been authorized to discuss a substantial research partnership and funding opportunity." The crowd was now completely captivated by this mysterious exchange. People began looking around at each other, wondering if someone among them might be this Dr. Daniel. Some of the medical professionals in attendance seemed particularly intrigued by the mention of cancer research and clinical trials. Dr. Martinez, who knew everyone at the party, spoke up. "We all know each other here. No one is conducting cancer research or goes by Dr. Daniel. You might want to check your information." Meanwhile, I was standing frozen in the corner of the garden, my heart pounding so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. After 4 years of carefully protecting my identity and research, these representatives had somehow tracked me down to my family's home. The moment I had both hoped for and feared was finally arriving. The lead man looked around the gathering once more, his eyes eventually finding mine across the yard. There was something in his expression that suggested recognition, even though we had never met. Perhaps it was the way I was standing apart from the group, or maybe it was the look of shock on my face, but he seemed to sense that he had found what he was looking for. "Dr. Daniel," he said, speaking directly to me now, "we need to discuss your research on targeted gene therapy and its implications for cancer treatment, specifically your work on cellular regeneration and tumor suppression." Time seemed to stop as every person at the party turned to look at me. The silence was absolute and deafening. I could see the confusion on my parents' faces, the shock on Sarah's, and the bewilderment of everyone who thought they knew exactly who I was and what my life had become. I took a deep breath and stepped forward from the garden corner, where I had been hiding. My legs felt unsteady, but I forced myself to walk across the yard toward the 3 men who had just changed my life forever. "I am Dr. Daniel," I said quietly, my voice barely audible in the stunned silence. The lead man smiled with satisfaction and relief. "Dr. Daniel, I am James Morrison from Meridian Pharmaceutical Consortium. We have been trying to reach you for months regarding your research papers on targeted gene therapy. Your work has been reviewed by our top scientists and medical advisory board." My mother looked like she might faint. "This is impossible," she stammered. "Tessa, what is going on? What is he talking about?" Before I could answer, Mr. Morrison continued with professional enthusiasm. "Dr. Daniel, your research represents the most significant breakthrough in cancer treatment we have seen in decades. Your method of using modified genetic markers to target cancer cells while preserving healthy tissue is revolutionary. We would like to offer you a $50 million research grant and a full partnership with our consortium to bring this treatment to clinical trials." The number 50 million hung in the air like an impossible dream. I could see people trying to process what they were hearing. Sarah's mouth was open in shock. My father was blinking rapidly, as if trying to clear his vision, and my mother looked like she was trying to solve an impossible equation. $50 million, my father repeated weakly. "That is correct," Mr. Morrison confirmed. "Dr. Daniel's research has the potential to save millions of lives and revolutionize cancer treatment globally. We have already had preliminary discussions with the FDA about fast-tracking clinical trials based on the theoretical framework and initial laboratory results." I found my voice and stepped fully into the conversation that would finally end 4 years of secrecy. I have been working on this research since I left Harvard. I could not pursue it through traditional academic channels because I needed to protect the intellectual property and ensure the research could not be stolen or compromised. My mother was staring at me as if seeing a stranger. You have been conducting medical research for 4 years. How is that possible? I established a laboratory and have been working under the pseudonym Dr. Daniel to protect my identity and research. I have 3 international patents pending and have been collaborating with researchers worldwide through secure channels. Mr. Morrison nodded approvingly. Dr. Daniel has also been working with the World Health Organization on protocols for global implementation of this treatment, particularly for underserved populations in developing countries. The transformation in the crowd's demeanor was immediate and dramatic. The same people who had been pitying me moments earlier were now staring with awe and respect. Mrs. Patterson, who had called me a waste of potential, looked like she was trying to recalibrate everything she thought she knew about reality. Dr. Martinez stepped forward, his medical background helping him understand the significance of what was being discussed. Targeted gene therapy for cancer treatment. If what you are saying is true, this could change everything. It is true, Mr. Morrison confirmed. We have had our research teams review Dr. Daniel's work extensively. The peer review process has been unprecedented in its positive response. Sarah finally found her voice. Tessa, you have been working on cancer research this whole time? Why did you not tell us? I looked at my family and then at the crowd of people who had watched me be humiliated just minutes earlier. I needed to protect the research until it was ready. I could not risk it being stolen or compromised again. My mother's expression was cycling through disbelief, confusion, and what looked like the beginning of pride mixed with guilt. Again, the reason I left Harvard was because my thesis advisor was trying to steal my research. I chose to protect my work rather than get a degree. The party had become something entirely different now. Instead of celebrating Sarah's graduation, everyone was trying to process the revelation that the family failure was actually a pioneering medical researcher on the verge of changing the world. Mr. Morrison handed me a folder. Dr. Daniel, we would like to schedule a formal meeting to discuss the partnership details and research funding. We believe your work could be saving lives within 2 years if properly supported. I accepted the folder, feeling the weight of 4 years of secrecy finally lifting from my shoulders. I would be honored to discuss this further. The silence that followed was different from the earlier shocked silence. This was contemplative, respectful, and filled with a new understanding of who I really was and what I had been doing during my years of apparent failure. Looking around at the faces of people who had just finished laughing at my mother's prediction that I might become a security guard, I felt a complex mix of vindication, sadness, and hope for the future. Thank you all for watching this story about never judging someone by appearances or conventional measures of success. Have you ever been underestimated by people who should have believed in you? Share your experiences in the comments below, and remember to hit that like button if this story resonated with you. Do not forget to subscribe for more inspiring stories about overcoming adversity and finding your true path. Share this video with anyone who needs a reminder that success comes in many forms, and sometimes the most important work happens behind the scenes. I hope this story encourages you to believe in yourself, even when others do not understand your journey. Until next time, remember that your worth is not determined by other people's expectations.